Welcome to the show.
Yeah, well, not welcome to my show. Welcome to your show. Feels that way, doesn't it? I've talked about that before with targeted individuals, that all the attention that they get, especially at first, well, it just seems like everybody is just, watching you in your business. It's like you're the talk of wherever you are, wherever you go. It's crazy. It doesn't make any sense. And it leads the targeted individual into all kinds of syllogistic conclusions. Okay, and they know that. And later, then the targeted individual is constantly engaging in self-scrutiny. And that's what they want. That's the goal. Okay, they're not just trying to freak you out. They want to give you a disease. Okay, that's the same as the innuendo. Targets, they get hit with those conversations with the double meaning, and new targets, they have no idea until it hits them, and they'll use personal information. They'll probably try to shame the target, and then it involves the ego, and you don't want that to happen again. So what happens? You start reading into things, you start looking for the double meaning, and it's a disease. Okay, and I've warned people about that. It happened to me. And it took me, years to get over that. It defies all rational communication, and it stifles, the ability of the target to hold a conversation. It short circuits the way you think, just like, assuming that people are reading your mind or watching you. The target, when it gets hit with so many different angles and methods, and there's so much attention coming at the targeted individual, they could be by themselves out in the middle of the country and they still feel like people are watching them. Okay, I had a comment from one of the viewers: does it help to get out and get into a quiet place? I think it always does. I think it helps. But at the same time, for me, being in a larger community makes me feel safer, okay? Because there's other targets out there. If you're in a small community and you get picked as the scapegoat, it's a nightmare. And all the methods that are used against targeted individuals just get magnified. I don't care what it is. I don't care whether it's a disinformation campaign or, sleep deprivation or whatever. It's just that much worse. I don't know. I personally don't like small communities. I think that, you're kind of setting yourself up. If you're dealing with that, higher form of harassment, and you go to a small community, you're asking for trouble. You are. So that'd be my answer there. Get into the, hundreds of thousands of people minimum if you can. I guess it just depends on where you are and what you're dealing with. I lived in a small community of about 4,000 people, and it was a nightmare. I mean, I had a literal police record that I had to, when I finally left that place, I haven't had a problem since. I mean, I was in jail like 2 times. It was ridiculous, man. I had people making stuff up, lying. And I lived in that community when I was a little kid too, and it was the same way. I remember one time I was with my family up in Canada, and we went up there for a couple weeks, and we got home, and we were bringing the suitcases in, and the phone rang, and my mom answered the phone. She's like, "What?" And she said, "Well, I know that's not true." And she hung up the phone. Evidently, a bunch of people had gotten together and swore to testify against me that I had destroyed someone's property on such and such of a date, which would have been about, 3 or 4 days before, we had got back from Canada, which, like I said, we were up there for 2 weeks. But they had, grown-ups. had gotten together and, swore that they had watched me break, windows out of a house and, one of those big old sliding glass doors and destroy someone's property. And they were eyewitnesses, supposedly. And I wasn't even in town. And I had stuff like that. I've had a lot of stuff like that. And it was all, in that small community of people. Nightmare. And I had a couple buddies that used to ask me, it's like, people, they're always saying things about you, but you've never done anything to any of these people, and why are they, what's their problem? And you don't even know what's going on when you're a kid because you don't know any of that stuff, right? You don't know what the hell's going on. You don't know what being targeted even is, but it does happen. And small communities are like that. And I've noticed that as soon as you get out of those smaller communities, it does get better. If you're a targeted individual and you're wondering, hey, how can I make this better? I would go to a larger community. If you're in a small community, that's why it's really, really bad. Okay. It depends on what you're dealing with, though. But yeah, I mean, put it this way, I've lived here for about, the last 20 years, around the area where I am now, and I haven't had so much as a traffic ticket. In fact, the cops pretty much like me around. I deliver food to them. I have no problems in the community I'm in. It's not huge. It's, maybe 140,000 people. But yeah, it's a huge difference. But getting back to, how targeted individuals are given, those diseases. That's really the only way I can look at it. I made a video called Mind Virus one time. And some people were kind of offended because to them, I was kind of insinuating that all this stuff is just in their head. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Okay, that's not what I was getting at. When I made the video Mind Virus, what I was getting at is that a lot of times, targeted individuals are sensitized, okay? And when that happens, they become apprehensive or they read into things. Or in the case of innuendos, they're reading into conversations or they're looking for the hidden meaning. It just totally throws everything off. It's like a disease. It's like a virus. And the same is true with targeted individuals concerning that type of Truman effect. Okay. And, it does. It feels like you're on some type of reality show. Okay. I know a guy who, he's a targeted individual. He ended up going to prison. He freaked out. He had some pretty good stories, though. And I'm not saying I'm any better because it could happen to anybody, by the grace of God, But this guy was talking about the Truman Show, and he was talking about some of the stuff that he was dealing with and that he could walk into any convenience store in the city and, with a little bit of personal information, maybe even just one word, he would get something back. He would get a comment, he would get some street theater. And it was just unreal, and he was convinced that people were literally watching him. He was convinced that he was on a type of Truman Show. And the attention that targeted individuals get is, it's very convincing. I mean, how are you going to, process that information? How does it work? How are people connected? How is this whole thing going down? And then with, the internet and the possibilities there, I mean, it's enough to freak anybody out. I've dealt with that kind of thing. In fact, I experienced a lot of that, just like all targeted individuals in the beginning when it got real hot and heavy. And I had somebody walking through my yard one time, I think it was back in '94, and they were talking about, a radio signal or a television signal or something, some kind of a broadcast signal. And they were in my yard. I don't even know where the hell they were. I knew the landlord. It was a house. It was a private yard. And they were just, all of a sudden I heard people talking, and they were saying, it's got to be coming around from this area because I'm pretty sure he lives here. That's what they said. And I'm like, what the hell are these guys talking about? And they were walking around and they were looking up on my, roof and everything. And then after talking about this stuff for, I don't know, probably about 10 minutes, and they walked away. And I was like, what the hell, And then with all the weird stuff, that was going on in my life with, the targeted individual stuff, the street theater, the innuendos, all that stuff, man. I was convinced at that point that, there was some type of a camera system with a broadcast system or something, I didn't know what to think. So I've dealt with it, man. What are you supposed to think? And, as time goes on and trial and error prevails, and I've talked about that before, the targeted individuals, sooner or later, they start to see the inconsistencies, right? And I've talked about that before where, they might throw something out at you that's, that's got personal information in it. And whereas, at first you might have been paranoid, it might have triggered you to start thinking about something specific, that you get used to it or you just don't care anymore or whatever. And you're thinking about something completely different, and it totally, takes on a different track of thought for you. You're just not affected by it. But they don't know, and the things that they're saying after that are completely wrong. Okay, whereas, before it would have been accurate. So you're going, hey, these people really don't know as much as I thought they did, kind of a thing, right? Before I thought they were literally reading my mind or something was going on. And now I see that that's not really what's going on. There's some type of illusion kicking here, right? And, I've talked about that before too, that just in my opinion, the spirit world, they can throw things into your mind. They can put thoughts into your mind. And if they can do that, and I believe that that's possible, then they can also do that with other people. So they wouldn't necessarily even have to know what you were thinking at all. They could just be getting information vicariously, from the spirit realm, from the spiritual dimension, or whatever. And at that point, it just looks like something that it's not. Okay. And, with the Truman effect, I think it's the same thing. Okay. I really do. I think that it can manifest in a lot of different ways. I think that people could pull that off, right? I think the government could pull that off too. Okay. I think that, there's a lot of different scenarios that if you got a bunch of, personal information on somebody and set it up and orchestrated something, that you could do that. Okay, you could literally make somebody think that, and until the target gets to the point where they just don't care, which usually takes a long time. It's gonna have that effect, and it can actually give you that disease, man, where you're gonna be scrutinizing yourself. You're gonna literally internalize that, and you're gonna believe that people are either reading your thoughts, or somehow they know, or whatever. There's maybe some type of psychotronic device reading your mind, or people are psychic. I had a comment from a guy a while ago. He was talking about mind reading, and I think it's an illusion. I do, and I think that's how it's done. I think that these beings that we're dealing with are really old. They've been watching people for a long time, and they know you. They know all about you, man, and they have been doing this for thousands of years, and they're professionals, okay? They can set you up and knock you down all day long. That's just what they do. That's why they're running around on the planet, okay? And, it's that's the way it is. Either you're going to submit to God and you're going to get away from them, or you're going to be dealing with them and it's not going to be fun. And they've got a lot of techniques. They've got a lot of methods. Not everybody gets that business from them. Okay, some people get the fun type of delusion, but, eventually it's going to be a rude awakening. Okay, so you can look at this as a blessing, but I think that's how it works. And it looks like people no, it looks like they have that type of knowledge. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes people will literally, hack your phone, or they will, get into your dwelling and install cameras. But it doesn't always have to be that way, okay? And if you're dealing with that higher form of harassment, and it's just mind-boggling, right? And you're wondering what's going on. I've heard people talk about the fusion centers that way too, okay? And it doesn't mean that they're not, using stuff like that, but you have to remember, what comes first, right? And the first cause is always the cause. Okay, so you have the government, you have secret societies, you have collusions, you have groups of people, you have people that are hacking your phone and doing all kinds of stuff, and they want to play God or whatever. Yeah, that happens. But, when the logistics fall apart and you find yourself on the run, and you're going into, the Quickie Mart in a city that you've never been in, and there's 4 gas stations that you could have chose from on your way into town, and you get it, there's no possible way that somebody is, calling someone, and, there's government agents at the store now working, undercover at the Conoco. And it's just not happening, okay? The logistics fall apart. But when you look at it from the spiritual dimension, people don't have to be in that conscious collusion. You don't have to have government employees at all the stores who just happen to be contacted by your handler. It doesn't have to be, that logistical nightmare when you're trying to explain it. And I'd be confident in saying that there's a huge portion of the world that could be at the total control of the kingdom of darkness, of that spiritual dimension, at a whim. Okay, that's as far as I'm going to go with that one, because you're into a very sensitive area, at that point, because you're dealing with people who are being controlled by either one or the other. And I think that, even in, Christian circles, I think people can mess up and they can be oppressed and stuff like that. So there's a lot of speculation there. But that's how I look at it, okay? And I'm giving you this advice for a reason. Okay, when I started to process this as a spiritual issue, they had no choice but to pretty much stop messing with me, comparatively speaking. Okay, there's 2 ways that you're gonna kind of shut that stuff down. First, you've probably got an ego problem. I did. And when people harassed me, it really got to me. The personal information, the innuendos, all that stuff. When I got to the point where I didn't care, that kind of shut it down just by itself. But when I started to process this information as a spiritual issue, it took the wind out of their sails, man. They weren't, stomping around me like they were, the higher ups in a secret society or CIA operatives or whatever. They were just people who were basically, being controlled by the kingdom of darkness and on their way to hell. I don't care if they've got money. I don't care, if they've got the things of this world, because, eventually that's going to come to an end and they're going to have to make a decision. They're on the wrong side. They're wrong. Okay? And it made a huge difference. It was huge. Okay, if you're getting a lot of that, if you're getting a lot of this type of activity where people are using innuendos on you, or directed conversations, or street theater with personal information or whatever, if you start to process this and, get over your ego and everything, process it as a spiritual situation and take the wind out of their sails, it's gonna cut it down. 75% of it's gonna drop. It's gonna disappear. Okay, I'm telling you, I know what I'm talking about. So rather than to come to syllogistic conclusions, rather than assuming that you're on, a type of Truman Show, or that people can read your mind, okay, or that people have cameras in your house or in your bathroom or in your car or something, and that kind of stuff can happen. And that comes into the area of your ego and stuff like that. Just remember, these people are the ones that need to be ashamed, right? If they're doing that, if that's literally what's going on. But I don't think it has to, okay? And there's a lot of illusions that go on concerning this whole phenomenon of gang stalking. There just is. Doesn't mean that you can't be dealing with the government and technology, and some of that stuff is pretty sophisticated, but I don't think it has to be. I know that in my case, it wasn't like that, and I'm pretty experienced. I've dealt with some pretty heavy harassment, and I still am. But you have to remember the motive. They want you to be scrutinizing yourself. Okay, they want you to engage in self-scrutiny and tear yourself apart. They want to take the peace away from you, right? Get you to the point where you're just consumed with this stuff and assuming all these things. And, they want you to become self-conscious, and they want to stifle you. They want you to be reading into things. And, just the fact that you're trying to figure out what's going on underneath the surface of all these conversations or whatever that are going on around you or that you're engaging in, it's going to short circuit the way you're able to function. You can't let them do that to you. Guys, be good to yourselves. Be safe.